Welcome back to our podcast. Episode 2 is called Interview Finesse, where we cover the do's and don'ts of interviews. So if you haven't listened to our first episode, I recommend to go back and listen to that. It's all about preparing for the interview, questions to ask, things like that, things that we think are super helpful, but also that we know our hiring managers cover. So this is the second episode. We have 3 more after this that will cover salary negotiation, building a resume, as well as a recap of our 2023 process. But I'll kick it off to you, Brody.
All right. So interview etiquette, interview finesse. That the title's finesse, but interview etiquette's really what we're going to be covering. Sounds simple, right? I mean, like everybody should know how to have proper etiquette when you're doing an interview. Who doesn't know, right? Simple common sense, like rules to proper etiquette. You would actually be very surprised. I have like horror stories from over 17 years in the recruiting field. I could probably do an entire show on some of the interview things that have happened regarding etiquette. So how about you, Sarah? Have you ever seen it? You don't have to give personal stories, but have you seen some crazy stuff?
Yeah, I've been doing this probably, I think just over 4 years now. And I feel like I've seen it all. I can't imagine what you've seen.
I've seen intoxicated people come in. I've seen someone in a bathing suit come into an office. Just like things were just like, what?
Yeah. People answering, in today's day and age, answering video calls and, not wearing something appropriate or not wearing enough,
It's crazy. So clearly, if some experienced employees don't know why we assume someone's in college with less experience would know this, hopefully some of these best practices will stand out to you as you're getting prepared. So let's go over interview etiquette again, how it's crucial to making a positive impression, right? So again, we talked about this in the first episode, like your first impression is so crucial. That's what you're making with the manager, with your potential employer. Can't express this enough. Few key points to keep in mind when you're doing this. So there's different stages to the interview. You've got, obviously before the interview, during the interview, and after. I'm going to run over before and kind of talk about things you've got to do before you actually go in and to be prepared. So research the company. We said that previous episode as well. Listen to the last episode. Basically just be able to speak to who the company is, what industry they're in, and what they're doing. That's common sense, but you've got to do that. Understand the job role, review the job description to understand the key responsibilities and be able to speak to those and how you're a fit. Identify your skills and experience and how they align with that role. Mm-hmm. All right, so those are simple. This is where I feel like we're getting elementary, but like you got to talk about it. Dress appropriately. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 different types of interviews you're going to participate in because you've got in-person interviews. Which is like old people like me. That's all we ever knew. And then the world was like, oh, we're getting real high tech. Now we're going to do phone interviews. And then, video interviews are now. I mean, that's a lot of them. So you've got to be able to dress professional and be able to handle all of them. Phone's different, right? But so let me start off with phone because that's the easiest. Just don't be in a place where there's a lot of background noise. Be isolated in a room where you don't want the person conducting the interview where they can't hear you or they just feel like you're not giving them, the attention that they, require for that interview. That one's kind of easy. In person, so dress professionally. That doesn't mean you have to be in a 3-piece suit. If you're a guy or a girl, I don't know what girls would wear. What do girls wear? Like what would be the equivalent of that?
You could also wear a 3-piece suit, okay. But just, nice slacks, a blouse, if you have a blazer, that's what we would consider, more business.
And this is not a bad question too. I actually don't mind when we're calling people to set up interviews and they say, hey, what's the dress attire? Because sometimes it's business casual, right? Which is fine for a guy, again, like a polo shirt with khakis or a girl, business casual.
Just jeans and a blouse.
It depends on what the manager wants you, because it's not going to be like a knock on you, but if you are wearing like a suit and a tie and all that stuff and you're coming and the whole team that's interviewing you is in, khakis or blue jeans, you kind of stand out. So just ask. That's a fair question. But you want to make sure you're dressed appropriately for that interview. All right, video. Again, I would always, if I'm going to let y'all speak to the females, okay? Guys, have a collared shirt on. I feel like it does. You can have a tie. That's a good approach. At least have a collared shirt on. You can be sitting in your shorts underneath because all they're seeing is up top. So nobody cares, but just keep it professional up top. Make sure you're, sounds so dumb to say, but groomed, have your hair groomed, like look professional.
Take
like
a shower.
Yeah, like you're going to walk into the job. What would you look like? And that sounds so childish, but that's the truth. So what would y'all say for girls? Like what, or,
I think the easiest is usually a sweater if it's winter. You can always throw on a blazer with a blouse, but just having a nice blouse. Don't wear a t-shirt, nothing crazy, nothing, something you would wear out on the town is probably not something you want to wear on an interview.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And again, I say those are common sense. And here's my favorite part of this. Again, this is all under the section before the interview. So I said, research the company, understand the job role, dress appropriately. And then this is my favorite one, social media. And you might be saying, why is social media being brought up before the interview? Here's why. Because as soon as anybody okay, so we just interviewed Olivia back
A few months ago.
Yeah, a few months ago when we hired Olivia. You best believe we got on social media and looked at Olivia.
Oh, we
what
were
she
creeping
does. Yeah.
fully. Yeah.
Yeah. Is she partying every night? Is she crazy? Like what's the deal?
Yeah.
No, you're gonna get creeped on, and it's fair game. It's all fair game. So I would say clean up your social media.
Yeah.
Make sure. I mean, again, you don't need to get rid of social media. Social media is a part of our lives. People put their interests there and all that stuff. That's good. But you don't want to, have pictures at 4 a.m., doing shots at the bar with all your friends and all that stuff lined up with it. You just want to have a professional image.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and even, hey, maybe that's what really makes you happy and it doesn't interfere with your work. Okay. But then make sure your social media is private.
Yes.
yeah.
That's the easiest thing. Just make everything private. The whole world doesn't need to see what you're doing. But if you're interviewing for a professional job, they're gonna creep on you.
Yeah. Fair game. It's all fair game. All right, Sarah, what about you? What you got during the interview?
All right, during the interview, again, with the 3 different types of interviews for phone, the biggest thing is just being ready on time. If it's you're calling into a conference line, be there a couple minutes early. Make sure your equipment's working well, whether it's your phone, computer. I think that goes for all of them. When driving, if you're driving somewhere, I would say plan to be there at least 10 to 15 minutes early. That way, if you hit traffic or more red lights, anything like that is better. It's better to sit in the parking lot and wait or sit in the waiting room of a Teams meeting than show up late because that's your first impression.
Yep.
If you're doing in person, meet with a handshake. If you're not shaking hands because you're sick, whatever the case may be, that is okay. You can still be polite, introduce yourself with a smile. Same for a virtual interview. Introduce yourself with a smile, be ready, prepare your background. Make sure that there's nothing wild behind you. A lot of the software has different backgrounds you can upload. Don't use a silly one. If you're going to do that,
Do
use Blur or do an Office or something standard. It just make sure you don't have anything crazy, no crazy posters, roommates, anything like that in the background. For in-person virtual, for the rest of these, a lot of this is going to be body language. This goes for both in-person and virtual. If you are checking your phone all the time, if you are looking away from the interview, or if you are staring out the window.
Hold on, pause. Don't even have your phone.
Yes.
Don't check your phone. Like, don't even have your phone.
No, have it tucked away. Leave it in your car if you're in person, just don't have that around because it looks like you're not interested, you don't care, you're not enthusiastic. Don't sit with a blank face. Like, I understand there's people out there that have a resting face that's not super friendly. Smile on purpose. I don't care if you have to practice in the mirror, do something. Just seem friendly, seem like you're able to talk to these people. With the gestures, when you're listening, actively listen. Don't just sit there. Nod your head, say a couple yeses, or if you're confused about something, it's okay to kind of, tilt your head a little bit and write that down. It's okay to have a pen and paper to write down. Do not use your phone for notes. Bring a piece of paper. Might be old school, but it just looks better. It's easier and it's less distracting. That would also help you prepare if they say something that you are curious about. Write it down and you can bring that back in the questions portion. With answering questions, speak clearly, enunciate as best as you can, be concise, don't tell a story that lasts 30 minutes. No one cares. I'm sorry. No one cares. If they ask a question and it's specific like that, give the answer. You can give a little spiel on it or explain your reasoning, relevant details. Just keep it, relevant. Again, enthusiasm. We talk about that all the time because that is going to set you apart over someone that has the exact same qualifications, maybe not enthusiastic about anything that they're doing. Again, questions. I know we covered a lot of that in the last episode, so definitely make sure you go back and listen. But prepare those questions in advance. And like I said, write them down during the interview, but make it clear that you're writing them down. Again, for the 1,000th time, do not use your phone. Do not use a notes app on your phone, whatever the case may be. And lastly, professional communication. You do not have to use fancy words. You don't have to do anything wild, try and have an accent, whatever you think works. Don't do that. Just be polite. Don't say casual things. Like, don't say, hey, dude, I was thinking about this, Be professional. Think that you're, meeting one of your friend's parents for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. Ask professional questions. Don't get too personal. Don't use the current TikTok trends language. I'm a little bit older, so I'm a little behind on the trends. But don't, if something's exciting, don't be like, oh, that's fire. Like, that's embarrassing. And majority of our interviewers, they don't know what that means. So
I don't know what that means.
Exactly.
Does that mean that's cool?
Yeah, awesome, great. And again, even that one's outdated. Just don't do it. Just use, the standard language to things you were taught pretty much in elementary school. We go back to the basics here. And then again, like I said, Mr. and Mrs., for example, if, say it's me interviewing you, unless I say you can call me Sarah, call me Mrs. Hyde. I will tell you to call me Sarah, but there's a difference. Wait for them to initiate that more casual contact and then feed from it from there.
So, and I know you're wrapping up, but I'm reading some of the things, like you said, arrive on time, mind your body language, listen, act. So all these things, I was like, why is this important? I'm going to tell you why. It's because if you're not on time and if your body language looks like you don't care and you're not enthusiastic, as soon as you walk out of the room, the people interviewing, that's a first impression. They're going to look at each other and be like, this person's not serious.
Yep.
And you're out.
Immediate no pile.
This stuff's so basic, but that's why we're saying it. So,
yeah, no, I fully agree. It sounds like Brody said, I think in the last episode, it sounds elementary, it sounds basic, but that's what really matters because going into an internship, it's the core. They understand that you haven't done 1,000 interviews. Like they know this is your first one. It's okay to mess up. Just come prepared and be professional.
That's true too. I didn't thought about that. There's grace given to intern interviews.
For sure.
Absolutely. That's something y'all should think about too. Like, because I know you're stressed. Like we're stressed doing a podcast. So I know you're stressed doing interviews. Everybody gets stressed during interviews, but an intern interview honestly has way more grace extended to it because everyone in the room knows this is someone who is not experienced in this area.
Yep.
So if you mess up, it's okay. More than any other interview you'll probably ever do. So, all right. So we talked about before the interview. Sarah's just kind of talked us through during the interview. So Olivia, why don't you kind of walk us through the interview's over. You're feeling good. What's next after the interview?
Okay, you're always going to want to make sure to send a thank you email, preferably as soon as possible, definitely within 24 hours, and just express your appreciation for the opportunity. This is so important because, not everyone gets chosen for an interview, so you kind of want to acknowledge that by showing your appreciation. And also in that email, it's a good idea to reiterate your interest in the position. You could mention a key point from your interview, which can serve as a reminder, put a face to the name on the email and let them tie that back into that.
Yeah. And something big there too, you may not always have the interviewer specific email. You may have something, one of our emails or something from HR. That's okay too. You can send an email to us and just say, I really want to thank their time. Sometimes we can give you their email. Sometimes we can just forward it over for you. But every single time we've done that in the past, the interviewers loved it. They super appreciate it.
Yeah. It's positive. That's what it is.
Yep.
So.
And then also you're going to want to make sure you follow up appropriately. Most of the time they will give you a timeline for the decision. So make sure you wait until that period is over before you follow up. And if they didn't give you a timeline, just wait a few days.
All right, hold on. So let me jump in. So, because this happens a lot. So it's totally normal for somebody to say, hey, again, send that the email saying thank you for the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually appropriate to say, and a lot of this will get brought up during the interview, but if it's not, say, hey, do you have a timeline on that decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally fine to ask that. That's cool. But this has happened to me a lot too, is where you say, hey, we're thinking it's going to be another week to 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then multiple emails after that saying, have you made a decision yet? Have you made a decision yet? I get that all the time. That's annoying.
Yep.
Don't do that. Like, just ask what the timeline is. And then let's say hypothetically give you 2 weeks. Okay, they'll at 2 weeks email back and check back in.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yes.
But don't do like, hey, just
Every
checking
day.
back in, checking back, spend 48 hours checking back in. That honestly puts a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, man, like leave me alone. We're gonna get to you.
Yeah,
So.
there's definitely a difference in being persistent and being enthusiastic. Like Brody said, if you're emailing every day, absolutely not immediately negative. But if they say, hey, we'll know in the next couple days and you don't hear anything, sure, follow up. And we might say, hey, they need one more week or whatever the case is. But they're not going to make a decision on who they want to hire and just not tell you.
You're right.
Yeah.
We're going to follow up with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
With all of that being said, make sure, to follow up politely. You don't want to come across rude or pushy. That'll be an immediate turn off. So, just send a quick email saying, hey, just wanted to check in on my application. I'm still super excited for the opportunity, something like that, to just kind of politely touch base and, going back to what I previously said, reiterate your interest in the internship.
Yeah.
Yep. Short and sweet.
So, and this isn't even on the agenda for what we're going to talk about. I'm just curious. So, like, I'm big at texting with candidates. Like, do you text with candidates, Sarah?
Sometimes.
Do you, Olivia?
I almost always text.
Yeah, I text a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's changed over the past few years. That's like I probably text more than I email now, to be honest with candidates. So, like, if you've got the recruiter's number and y'all have already been in communication, or you and the manager, it's fine to reach out that way as well.
Yeah. I mean, our cell phones are in our emails majority of the time. And I know from our experience, at least with our company, we'll say, hey, you can shoot a text or give me a call. And if they've said that, it's okay to text them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. So, interview's over. We've done all that. So, just some general tips overall. And we kind of hinted on this before. Turn your phones off. Like, turn them off. Don't have them with you. I would just recommend not having your phone with you. Unless you're like addicted, you can't help it. But that's because I'm an old boomer and I don't understand all you kids with your phones. But whatever, I would not take the phone into the room unless whatever. Don't let it be a distraction. That's what I'm trying to say.
And if it is in there, it has to be on do not disturb or silent.
Don't even put it on the table. Like, just keep your phone out of the way.
Keep it in your bag.
Yeah.
And then this sounds really dumb, but bring copies of your resume. Bring multiple copies of your resume to provide to the interviewees.
If in person.
If in person. If in person. So I've got a story about this. So I'm fresh out of school and I'm trying to find a job. And my first interview, I applied online. So they're like, hey, come in for the interview. And I've talked to them online. So I did a phone interview.
The internet was around back then?
Shut up, sir. But what's funny is, like, it kind of was like,
It was still new.
it's still kind of like, what? How does this work? Hey, by the way, totally side note, like, Sarah just taught me that you can drag and move tabs on your, explain what I'm saying right now.
He didn't know that you could move tabs. He thought you had to open like a whole new. He was working off multiple screens and did not know that you can combine tabs.
Yep.
Other people may not know that. If you don't know it, Google it.
They know
It's
it.
a big help.
I think everybody knows it except for me.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that Olivia and Sarah have to work with. Anyways, I go into my first interview, fresh out of school. I've applied online. I've done the phone interview. So they know, like, we've talked, like, all right, let's come in person. So I come and sit down at a table and there's two directors there. And they're like, hey, yeah, have you got your resume? I was like, no.
Did you bring anything with you?
I don't know. Maybe I brought one. I don't think I brought any.
Piece of
honestly.
paper,
I don't
nothing
know
to take notes.
how stupid. And they were like, and this was my response. And she goes, so you didn't bring your resume? I was like, well, I thought y'all had it since I sent it to you and you've already interviewed me. Like, I was an ignorant kid.
Did you get that job?
I did get it.
Oh.
Yep.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah. I don't know how I got it.
You probably did everything else exactly like we talked about.
Yeah.
That's how.
So anyways, bring your resumes with you. It never hurts to have extra copies, especially sometimes at interviews, you'll notice too, like you're meeting with this manager, they're going to bring a technical lead in, or they're going to bring somebody else in, bring a couple with you so you can just slide them out to everybody. So, just, remember interview etiquette, it reflects your professionalism and can significantly impact the perception of you as a candidate. So, I mean, that's what it is. Like decisions are made about you and the career you're going to get based off the way you treat the interview, the way you're dressing for it, the way you're paying attention, the way you're following up. All these little things factor in into you landing that job that you're wanting for.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's really it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, like Brody kept saying, like, it's elementary, it's basic. Just be well prepared, be respectful, engage in the conversation, and just leave a positive impression on them. That's it. That's all you can hope for. If you've done those things, then you gave a great interview. But we hope this helps and that you got a little bit of, insight from our side of the table, since we are, recruiters, technically HR. And, we've been through all this ourselves, and Olivia and I more recently than not. So our next episode is going to be covering some salary negotiations. So keep an eye out on our social media for that. And thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.